You're listening to The Secrets of Sacred Art, where we unearth the hidden treasures, history, and deeper meanings in religious and sacred art. We're your hosts, Alix Murray
and Kathryn Laffrey. Welcome to episode 37, Caravaggio Lost and Found. This episode, we are finally fulfilling our very first Discord request. This is from September of 23. Woo!
Wow. Thank you for your patience.
Yes. Thank you, Amy Flo. You were the first person to ever comment on Discord for us. And you started off with a very simple phrase. And I quote, you said one word, Caravaggio. Here he is.
There you go. Yeah, we finally, it's not that we've been thinking about it the whole time. This is the thing.
The whole time.
But when the time is right, the time is right. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So today we'll explore the life, art, and stylistic innovations of Michelangelo Merisi de Caravaggio, aka Caravaggio from now on.
Exactly. Please follow The Secrets of Sacred Art in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. For a fuller experience, you can join us on the SQPN YouTube channel, where you can see all the images we are discussing on the show. You can find us on social media at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, on X at SQPN, or Instagram at StarQuest Network. And this, again, we always say this, please do join us on YouTube to look at these extraordinary paintings. I always feel like I should go through the source so I can find other ways of describing these things instead of, that's amazing, that's beautiful. But these are really, these are exceptional images that we're going to be looking at today. So we just encourage you to join us on YouTube and go through the images.
It'll be worth taking the time to hit pause every now and then and get a good look.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So, shall we start off? So I'm just going to do a quick little bio of Caravaggio, but I'm not really going to spend too much time on the paintings that he did and when and where and all that stuff, because we're going to be discussing that. So this is just a very, this is a brief thumbnail sketch of Caravaggio. So Michelangelo Merisi Caravaggio was born on or around the 29th of September in 1571, and he was named after St. Michael the Archangel. He was born into a relatively comfortable family. His father was an architect for a very wealthy and powerful family in the area. And Caravaggio, when he came into the world, it was not too long after the Council of Trent. And some of the efforts that the church made at this time to counter the heresies of Protestantism were all underway by the time he had reached adulthood. The church saw a need to catechize its members in various ways. So, for example, the Ignatian spiritual exercises, the writings of saints like Saint Teresa of Avila, musical compositions by composers like Giovanni Palestrina, and through visual arts by remarkably talented artists like Caravaggio. Mm-hmm. And so this is, I should say, this is the first one. That's a self-portrait of him in chalk when he was a young man.
And I always see this image pop up. When you search him, this is like the first thing that pops up. It's one of my favorites.
It's just really
it's like a simple honesty, I guess, is what I see. Yeah.
And a young man. Yeah.
Now, I thought I saw like his early childhood wasn't all that easy.
Yes. So the plague, it's really interesting. The plague was going through Italy at the time. And when I was reading about it, but I think both his grandfather and his father died during this plague. And his mother moved the family back to the region where Caravaggio got his name. So that's the area where he came from after his father died. And what's interesting is Cardinal Borromeo was the cardinal at this time during the plague, and no one could leave their homes during this plague for many, many, many months. And famine followed. It was very, there was a lot of suffering, but Cardinal Borromeo at the time set up outdoor masses in the city. And where people could see the mass from their windows, the windows of their homes. And he would process around the city and everything. So very interesting parallels of some of the things that we've experienced of, and they were talking in their accounts of how people just, they lost their minds being inside, and so that was, from that perspective, yes. Yeah. That was challenging for anybody and everybody. And he did lose his father at the time. And he did see a lot of suffering. But, I think things seemed to settle down a little bit for him once they moved away from the area. And he was with his mother. So we can go. So when he was, I'll show you in the next slide, the young Caravaggio took advantage of this drive to produce artwork for willing patrons. So there was this big boom of people wanting art again. Maybe they wanted to just get away from all the tragedy and everything that they had experienced. And so there were a lot of patrons. Obviously, the church was the greatest patron of art during this time. And he became a local apprentice an apprentice for a local painter called Simone Petrosano. And that's not this gentleman here. But he quickly exceeded or surpassed that master, and he soon moved on to a more famous, if not as talented, Cavaliere di Arpino, also known as Giuseppe Cesare. And so this is Giuseppe Cesare's self-portrait, or Cavaliere di Arpino. And apparently he would paint like in full costume of a cavalier with a sword, and he was very flamboyant. He was very good at self-promotion. He was able to, in his workshop, he just churned out artwork. It was almost like a factory. And Caravaggio was in charge of the flowers. And, so one person, it was very much like an assembly line. So you'd have one artist and this is all they did. And then, so that's not really, I would say, maybe not the best place to explore your creative talents,
I have to say, working in a studio situation similar to that, where we had different artists, we were all painting the same product, these little metal magnets, but we would have people that specialized in stuff. And after a while, cranking the same thing out over and over again, I did find my painting skills grow exponentially.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's memory. You can see how it's you just go over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And it's just, it was interesting. I can paint so much faster now, but I don't do any painting anymore. It's all needlework, which takes hours and hours.
Exactly. But you know what? But those hours were not lost. And I'm sure the hours that Caravaggio spent, painting flower petals were not lost in terms of his skills. And now this is another portrait of the young Caravaggio, a self-portrait of him, and it's titled The Young Sick Bacchus. And apparently this is a self-portrait after he had been hospitalized for several weeks, like 3 or 4 weeks, maybe even longer. And the theory is he must have had something to, because of the sallowness of his skin, and he's quite, his eyes, he looks anemic. He might look like he's a little bit jaundiced. But this is, it could be that. It could just be the palette that he chose. I don't know. But this is known as, but this is known as the sick young Bacchus. And it is Caravaggio, and it is a painting of him after he recovered from a very long illness. And so as a youth working for Giuseppe Cesare, he was spotted by Cardinal Del Monte, and he he became a great patron for Caravaggio, among other people. And this is the thing about Caravaggio. He had people who really recognized his talents, who really wanted to support him, and they did support him. But he seemed to have a very troubling love for chaos and violence. And if it hadn't been for that, he might have seen a lot of financial and social success in his lifetime, not unlike Jan van Eyck, another just incredibly talented artist, but also someone who seemed to not have the, he didn't seem to have he seemed to be a much more disciplined, stable person. Caravaggio was an incredibly unstable person for whatever reason. And unfortunately, for the reasons that we can only speculate, the more his patrons supported and encouraged Caravaggio, it only seemed to drive him towards his own destruction, Oh. And by the time he was taking up residence in Rome and working for some incredibly powerful families, he was working for cardinals in the Vatican. I think his rebellious tendencies were at its peak at that time, and he ran around with a group of friends, and their motto was nec spec, nec meto, which means without hope, without fear. So very nihilistic group of young men. And police records from that time show that Caravaggio was being arrested for assault, drunkenness, carrying a concealed weapon, harassing police, and soliciting prostitutes. And we can go on and on and on.
So he sounds like a lot of young rebellious boys nowadays who also have lost their father at an early age.
Yes, exactly. And seen a lot of violence and seen a lot of tragedy and instability. Exactly. And his bad choices and his violent nature forced him to flee Rome after he killed a man in a knife fight on a tennis court. So they were playing tennis and everybody got into a fight.
Tennis?
Yeah, can you imagine? Well, do you know what? I mean, these things happen. There's, it's a crime of, he was a very passionate man, and it seems like a lot of the crimes he committed were crimes of passion.
Wow.
And now at that time in Rome, the penalty for murder was death. And so Caravaggio fled the city to another city. And of course, this is before Italy. Italy was still composed of a number of city-states. So he could just go to another city and they wouldn't have Rome wouldn't have jurisdiction in another city. But even with that, he found patrons and supporters. And it's because of his extraordinary talent that people were able to do. I think they just were like, we've got to help this young man. It's incredible what he's doing. But, but he could never control his temper. And he even at one point assaulted the head of the Knights of Malta 3 weeks after this man basically stood up for him and vouched for him to the Pope, asked the Pope to give him a pardon. And he made Caravaggio a Knight of Malta. Wow. And 3 weeks later, he physically assaulted this man. So now he was, through his patrons, the Pope was prepared to pardon him for this murder. And he was on his way back to Rome to receive the pardon, and but he died under very suspicious circumstances on the 18th of May in 1610. Some people think he might have been murdered. Well, do you know what? Live by the sword, die by the sword. I mean, he was a really, if you read, and I have a couple of links. I have a really good link for Caravaggio.org, I think, and it's a very interesting website that really goes into detail about his life. I mean, how he had time to paint, I don't know, with all of the violence he was committing. Really.
Yeah, and paint significant works, and a lot of them.
This is what I'm saying. But there was just, I don't know. It's a very interesting, and I think it's a good thing to, and we'll probably get into this, about the life of the artist and the art they produce. And keep that in mind. I think when you look at some of his artwork, keep in mind this very turbulent, chaotic, passionate, violent young man, as you said, bereft of a father, and who clearly saw a lot of violence in his life. Now, his body was never recovered.
Oh.
So I don't know what happened to him. So that's why people suspect he might have been.
He was in his 30s?
He
30s?
was. Yeah, early 30s. And so that's why people suspect he might have been murdered, because whoever murdered him probably hit the body or destroyed it or buried it or whatever. Yeah. Yeah. Very, very tragic life of a man who produced some of the most extraordinary sacred art that's out there. Yeah. So
the one image I did not find, or I found but did not put in our show, I'll put it on our Discord. You know me and maps, Alex, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Found a map of the travels of Caravaggio.
Oh, wow.
I mean, little zigzags, hops all over the Italian boot.
Yes. Oh, yeah, because he was running. He was running from the law.
Oh, yeah. So it makes, again, looking at these pieces of art and seeing what he was able to accomplish while running from the law and living in total chaos blows my mind. But what's really fun is to see kind of where he began.
Yes, absolutely.
So found this work, which is like what they believe to be the oldest known work by Caravaggio, and painted shortly after he arrived in Rome in 1592. And it's just a simple boy. He's got a little basket or bag of fruit there. But there's a lot of speculation around the symbolism of the fruit that this boy is carving.
Okay.
Because people are trying to figure out, is he holding a pear? There's such a dark skin on there. And there's a bergamot. Do you know what that fruit is?
Yeah.
Have you ever tasted one? I'm curious. I've never.
No, there's a smell. Like, I just know, like, you can get a candle and it's like bergamot scent. Okay. So that's
I heard it was like intense and bitter is what the taste is. And it's a type of citrus. But they say that's the only one that's out here in front of him. And so the kind of the plausible meaning that has been come up with by art historians over the years is that it's suggesting that the boy is demonstrating resistance to temptation by ignoring the sweeter fruits of sin and instead favoring something a little more bitter and so it's like interesting. I could almost read it the other way around. Maybe he's ignoring the sweet fruits of grace and going for bitter destruction.
With that knife. Yeah. And
but it's neat to see the details in his work.
The draping is beautiful. The hands
and
are
the weaving in the basket.
Everything.
The speckles on the fruit. It's like, wow.
And just the way the shadow, the light, the shadows. I mean, he was a master of light and shadow. And these are kind of the very beginnings of it. But look how the shadow on the boy's neck just kind of beautifully pulls down his collarbone. That's so, that's real attention to detail. He was an observer. It's interesting. He was in order to do what he did, he had such a vision, and he was so observant, and yet not, he was very troubled, and
it's funny to think that part of his rebellious nature actually came within his art education, because he was so focused on the natural, that he would stay away from the symbolic. And you can almost see in this painting where it's like the boy's face almost looks a little sort of symbolic in its simplicity, but then you go down into the details of the fruit and you're getting all this strong detail and realism.
Yes.
So that was, his struggle, his balance of, sometimes people say he's like too natural to a fault.
Yes. But again, he does have something that, I would describe the academic style of painting as natural to a fault. If you want to maybe give it that criticism, I think his mastery of chiaroscuro, which we can go into, is what keeps him from that. That does add a mystery and depth to his paintings.
Yes.
And you can see it even at a very young age. He far excelled the artists who owned the workshops or ran the workshops where he worked. He very clearly excelled them very quickly at a young age. But this is where he learned his trade,
And this piece, you found this one.
Yes. So this is, I think this is St. Luke. Isn't that terrible? I should have. Sorry.
I know. I'm like looking. Where's the bowl? Or the.
Yeah.
Is it Luke? Is it Matthew?
Exactly. It could have been. You know what? I actually think this is St. Augustine. I think this is the inspiration of St. Augustine.
Oh, really?
And I think so. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Maybe you can look it up. But what I love about this, and this is something that, looking at his art, and you and I both know, drawing hands, drawing feet.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, they're so hard.
Although I do love drawing feet. I don't know what it is. I'm good at drawing toes and
oh
feet.
My gosh.
It's the hands that get me.
I think the hands get most people. I know. I did a portrait years and years ago, and the only thing I liked of the whole thing, I felt like I drew the pinky. I'm like, yes, that's a pinky.
1 out of 20 digits total. No.
Exactly. Yeah, but it worked. But what I love about this is you could almost see the movement in this, and the whole idea of this very naturalized, it's, the flesh and bone angel there, completely elevated. I don't know how they would have done this in the studio.
That's just what I was trying to picture. Was this kid like laying on a shelf above him or something? Yeah, but
the movement provided by the drapery or the draping of the fabric of this angel, it's almost like he's coming down again, like penetrating one, breaking in from another reality. And it's so beautifully done. And he was very innovative like this. People weren't doing things. I mean, he's not a Renaissance painter. He's a Baroque painter. And in Renaissance paintings, there's just not the movement isn't there. They're beautiful. But he takes it to another level, and really the artists in the workshop, there were a lot of artists trying to move in this direction, but I think he is probably the only one who really achieved that.
Yeah.
Because I've been looking at, I looked at a lot of the artwork of the different artists from the studios where he was working, and they just missed it. He really had a gift. This was an incredibly gifted man as a painter. So I found this one. So what's interesting, again, think about the troubled young man who painted this. This is the beheading of Saint John the Baptist with Salome and what was his what was her mother's name? Do you remember?
I don't remember the mother's name.
Okay, so it's thought that Salome is the one holding the tray.
Isn't it just Herodias? Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's just like, and this, something that he used to do, he would just bring these really extraordinary biblical scenes and he would put them in everyday settings in Italy. And that was something people really, that was a big criticism that people had of his work. They wanted sacred art to be, to a certain degree, removed from reality. They didn't want unattractive peasants in the paintings, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And here you have, it's an incredibly violent scene.
Yes.
You have some onlookers. But what's interesting about this, and you can't really see it, I think if you want to see what I'm going to point out, you're going to have to go online and try to get a really good high resolution image of this. But Caravaggio did not he signed, I think, 3 paintings, but he typically did not sign his paintings, as is appropriate with sacred art. But he did sign this one. And right below the pool of blood, written in the red pigment of the blood, is the name Caravaggio.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's almost like he signed it in blood.
Yes, exactly. And it's not even, and it looks like, do you know what, if you look at it close up, I couldn't find a really good high resolution shot of it, because otherwise I would have put it in here. But it looks like someone has taken their finger and written it. It's not like a brush. It's not like a proper signature. It really looks like somebody's taken their finger and written Caravaggio. Yeah. Yeah. And I think this was one of his last paintings, actually. But,
it's such a moving imagery. And yet at the same time, it's nice to see him still clinging to some of the iconographic tradition of seeing St. John. Because he has the camel hair draped down around his waist.
Yes.
That's kind of peeking out from the red. Drape.
Even though he didn't want to, he was trying to move away from a lot of the symbolism, the language of sacred art, and make something more realistic. But of course, if you're going to call something the beheading of St. John the Baptist, you're going to have to put something in to let people know this is St. John the Baptist being beheaded.
Yeah, it's interesting because looking at these and even this next one that you have, it's almost like someone taking a painting or icon and then trying to do live action. That's what I feel like. He's the live action artist.
Yes. And again, look at this. I mean, looking at this stuff, you can tell this is someone who is very aware of bloodshed and violence. Yeah. And Holofernes here, this is the beheading of Holofernes by Judith, and from the Old Testament. And I believe this is another self-portrait of Caravaggio as Holofernes. And we'll see that quite a lot in a lot of these paintings, which again gives you a little bit of insight into his psyche, maybe into his spiritual life. You know, we talked a little bit about that in our last podcast about Sagrada Familia, and how, you know, some of the psychological and spiritual space that I can't remember the name of the artist who did the passion side of the Sagrada Familia. I can't remember his name, and I won't remember it because it's a Catalan name, so there's no way. But, you know, looking at how
Subaros?
Subarak. Subarak. Thank you.
There we go.
Looking at how he depicted the different people, the different figures from the Bible, including Christ, I think that was a little bit of an insight into his own spiritual life. And when you look at something like this, I don't think Caravaggio had a particularly, well, no, how is he going to have a hopeful view of himself if his motto was nec spec nec motto, without hope, without fear.
Yeah. This is definitely showing his hopelessness.
Yeah. And at the same time, his ability to depict draping fabric and light and dark, and it is a scene that we've come into. This is another thing I've kind of picked up on in his paintings. They're painted in a way that you're included in the scene.
Yes. Yeah. Just definitely fitting for what he was commissioned to do in 1601. So, I got a map in there, Alex.
Oh yeah, there you go. It wouldn't be a podcast without a map.
No, it wouldn't be. So this lovely little church houses two of Caravaggio's great paintings: the conversion of St. Paul and the crucifixion of Peter. And they were commissioned for a chapel in this church shortly after one of its renovations. And so this is Saint Maria de Popolo. It has the tomb, or it was built on the tomb of the Domizi family, where, according to tradition, Nero was buried.
Oh,
and there used to be a chapel on top of this back in 1099. And the construction of that was commissioned by Pope Paschal II. And it was to replace a poplar tree that, according to legend, was infested by devils in the form of crows.
Ooh.
Alex and I have been having an off-camera conversation over the last couple of days about crows and what they represent in art and literature.
Yeah.
So here's our nasty little crows representing the demons.
You know what? I just remembered this when you said that. Caravaggio used to have a black dog that he used to walk around with, and the dog's name was Crow.
Wow. Okay, see, I love how all these little tidbits come together. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I just remembered that. Yeah,
because our crow conversation started long before our starting of the podcast, so very fun.
Yeah.
And then in God's most perfect timing, I love this connection. This church is the first seat of the Augustinian order in Rome and in the world. Now, we have someone special who's from the Augustinian order now, don't we, Alex?
We do. Who could that be? Yeah. Perfect timing.
Yay.
Fascinating.
Our lovely Pope Leo the 14th.
I know.
So if he wants, this is a short walk from the Vatican, 30 minutes.
I have a feeling he's probably been there many times. And if this is something, this image of, wow, think about this. I'm just, not that any of us can imagine what it's like to be the Pope, but can you imagine being Pope Leo the 14th and looking at this image of St. Peter being crucified?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a powerful image to look at as a Pope. Yes.
Yes, as anyone, but particularly as anyone.
Pope. Yeah.
And look at the details. Sorry, I was just going to say, one of the things that I'm just looking that people objected to, but it was like this new innovative thing that he did. Things were very, very realistic. And if you look at the lower left-hand side of the painting of the crucifixion of St. Peter, I mean, you could look at there's the dirt on the bottom of the man's feet. that would have been considered, gross. But yeah, it's that kind of detail.
That this shows us a possibility for how the crosses were stood up. I always wondered, if they're nailed onto this cross on the ground and you got to stand it up.
Yeah.
How would they have done that? And to see this man cross on his back, down under dirty feet, trying to help raise it up while the other guy's got the rope to pull it up over his shoulder.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to see.
It is. And it's really, and the intentionality of crucifying and murdering another human being.
Mm-hmm.
The cooperation and the effort it takes to do that kind of blows my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because of course this happened over and over again.
Yeah.
In Rome.
Wow. Yeah. So that's what's interesting about having this painting and the conversion of St. Paul right across from each other. And I love the fact that we get to see them, how they look in the chapel, that they're actually in their proper place and you can get an understanding for it. If you notice how high up on the wall these are, you're looking up into this. You are at ground level for both of these scenes.
Yes.
So that puts you down and dirty with the guy who's raising the cross for St. Peter. And then you are on the ground with St. Paul. And this is a funny story because I was showing this picture to my dad and telling him we were getting ready to do this podcast. And he says, "Oh, yeah, I know that painting. Someone told me that everyone's got it wrong. The real subject of the painting is the horse." Because it's the biggest thing. And it's like, that shows you, if you look at a painting out of context, you're going to miss who the subject is. Because we're supposed to be laying on the ground with St. Paul here and giving our life to Christ, saying it's all about you.
Yes, yeah. And because the horse doesn't have to worry about things like that. It's not about the horse. But you want to know something? This, I think, is a good example of how visual art works in conjunction with the spiritual life, because these, I believe, were painted in order to, how do I say that? They're supposed to work in conjunction with the Ignatian spiritual practices of prayer, bringing yourself into the scene from the Bible. And or spiritual exercises. Sorry, the Ignatian spiritual exercises. So that's why they're up high, so that you're at as you said exactly, Kathryn, you're at this level where you are supposed to be in the painting as well. And the other thing with them being up high, it forces you to be a little more active in observing them. If something is at eye level, it's almost passive with how you can interact with an image. But if it's up high or down low or something like that, it really is making you really become part of the conversation, shall we say?
Yes.
Or prayerfully become part of this scene. So it's beautiful. Yeah. So where a painting is, in context, in location, in height, all of those things really, really matter, especially with sacred art.
Yeah. And it's interesting to see how they work with the image of the Assumption that's above the altar. And that was painted by Annabelle Caravaggio.
Yes.
So, and it's funny too, because I know there was a little animosity there, because Caravaggio wasn't always well liked by his fellow artists.
No, well, do you know what?
He was respected, but I don't think they cared much for his personality.
I don't think anybody cared much for his personality, if I'm going to be honest. And Annabelle Caravaggio, he kind of went in a different direction. from Caravaggio. They were both trying to get away from a very short-lived style of art. And Kathryn, I don't know if you remember, but we did study this, called mannerism.
Yes.
And it was right after the Renaissance. And it was a bit, how do I call it? A bit twee, a bit, it was just not working. And I was debating whether or not we should put some images up of that example or that style of painting. And then I thought, you know what? No, because it's not worth it.
It's Caravaggio's day.
It's a Caravaggio's day, exactly. But these two men, Annibale Carracci and Caravaggio, they were contemporaries. They did know each other. And as you said, Kathryn, I think they well, I don't think Caravaggio respected anybody, but I think Carracci did respect him. But you can see how they both are Baroque artists, but moving in really different directions.
Yes. Yeah. And it's interesting too, the little script image down there in the red frame, that's actually digital copy of the commission letter that was written to Caravaggio, giving him a time limit of 8 months to complete both of these paintings.
Oh my gosh. I thought it was 8 months for one. Wow.
No, both of them.
How do you do this?
I mean,
That's
and he's running all over the place too. It's just crazy to think about, but yeah,
he's
there was the detail
and
of
fighting and
right.
not sleeping at night. You know what I'm saying? Oh my gosh. Yeah. Wow.
So,
but he did it.
He did it. He did beautiful work. And I love that it is still in the place it was commissioned for and not taken somewhere else. There's been too many pieces of art that have been stolen and relocated.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And then this is another one of Caravaggio's work that happens to be in the Prado Museum in Madrid. Maybe not always on display, though, because last time I looked at it, I think it was. But unfortunately, so this was done a year before the two that we just looked at. And it is one of the least popular paintings of Caravaggio's works. Don't know why, but it just seems to be the least popular.
Right, because it's kind of gross.
It is kind of gross. I mean, yeah, you got the graphic detail of where the stone hit Goliath's forehead. And you also have the detail of David tying a string or rope around Goliath's hair and stuff.
A ligature.
To be able to, carry him along.
Yeah. And again, I think this might not. I mean, he did several paintings of David and Goliath, I think, and this might be one. Another self-portrait. Yeah,
it looks like it, doesn't it?
Yeah. I know that there was one where it has been, yes, it's confirmed that it was a self-portrait, and it might have been this one. But yeah, this one is pretty gruesome, Kathryn.
Yeah. There's some interesting controversy about it too, because in getting it into the Prado, it arrived. They say it actually arrived in Spain as part of a royal collection. And the earliest known record of it was 1798 or 89. And they were around the death of King Charles III. And so there's been, it showed up in inventory records. But only problem is that the height in the records was different than the height that it is. And so what they're finding out, though, is as studying it and doing renovation work on it, that it wasn't unheard of in that time period to sort of resize and redisplay paintings in order to have better symmetrical effects in their palace designs when they would lay out their paintings. But it caused some controversy.
Yeah, no, that sounds like an 18. Remember when we went to that manor home when you visited here, and there was like
that's exactly what I was thinking of.
Exactly. Like all this stuff they did, and it was like so fake. And I mean, we're talking about from the 18th century. It was really fake. And I can see why Fusion really did not like the Georgians, and I know that there weren't Georgians in 18th century Spain, but just that whole idea of, the Enlightenment was taking hold all over Europe. Just this idea that you can, I know better. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I know better.
yeah.
I'm just going to take this and cut it down. And at the risk of sounding like a super snob, and my apologies if I do, but it's kind of like when people select a piece of art because it goes with their sofa. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rather than going,
I am guilty of actually doing a painting to go with someone's sofa. I love my sister. She asked for a painting, and so there you go.
Did it. There you go. But
I
it's
did
just like, I know. I mean, and I'm not, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to, that's fine. It's not a big deal. But if you have a Caravaggio, by all means, don't cut it down to size to fit in your family room, which is essentially what they did with this one. Although I wonder how big this one is. Do you have any idea about the size of this?
I'm trying to remember. You know what? I think I saw something like 180 centimeters. I don't even really know. It's on the Prado website, and it's in the links in our show notes. Go look at it at the Prado website. Hands down, for me, their website is one of the best websites for getting close-up looks at art. Yeah. They put up beautiful pictures in super high res so that you can zoom way in and see the details in Goliath's face, his eyes, the way his tongue is hanging off to the side and changing color. It's amazing.
That's why I love it. Oh my gosh. It's really gruesome.
I love the fact that there's that much detail in the work. It's incredible.
But again, this is a man he's not just guessing at what this looks like. Do you know what I mean? Like he's seen this
sadly.
Stuff. Yeah, sadly.
You had these images for us again.
Yes. Wow. Again. And these are ones, I think these are so moving. So the first one on the left, this is the entombment of Christ. And look at how, I don't know who this would be. I'm assuming it's going to be one of the disciples of Christ. How he's looking directly at you in this image. He's bringing you into the whole scene, the whole story. So again, those Ignatian spiritual exercises, this is something that you can imagine yourself being a part of. And then,
you wonder, is that Joseph of Arimathea?
Yeah. Who knows?
And but then the apostle in the green, maybe it could be John.
Yeah, like a young man, but then you've got the women lamenting, and then you've got in the background the Blessed Mother. Again, nobody has halos. There's nothing. You'd have to know the story in order to kind of pick this out. But but again, in terms of a catechesis, in terms of as I said, a spiritual exercise, just be prayerfully looking at this. Gosh, can you imagine the Stations of the Cross he could have put together?
Wow.
Yeah.
What's really amazing is looking at the hand of the apostle around Christ's chest.
Yes.
It's literally touching the wound in his side. I mean, it feels like it's folding the skin. It just, it makes you like cringe a little, and at the same time, like, wow, Lord, you did that for us.
Exactly. But do you want to know something? But it's interesting, and I'm just now noticing this, for all of his gruesome details, there are no wounds in the hands or feet of Christ. Look at that.
Oh, wait. Yeah, there is.
There is?
I just zoomed in. a lot
Okay.
on another
lot.
screen.
Okay.
Lot.
All right.
There is a small little slice in his hand where the nail would have gone through.
Okay. And then maybe we can't see him on the feet. It's just, and he's
barely on the foot. Same thing. One little slice on the top of that foot.
That's really interesting. That's really interesting when you take into consideration how detailed he was about blood and violence. This is not a very violent image of Christ, is it? Really interesting.
And then there's none of the whip marks. If he wanted to,
the scourging, yeah,
he could have gone over the top. Yeah,
yeah. Maybe he. I think the focus. Obviously, we can focus on Christ, but also on the face of the man holding his legs, and he's inviting. He's the one who has eye contact with us, direct eye contact with the viewer. And I would imagine this would have been up high, so you'd have to look up to it, and I'm sure it's massive. We should say that Caravaggio, his paintings were all life size. They were really incredible. And then if we look at this image of, this is the Supper at Emmaus, and it's a beardless Christ. And the shadows are beautiful in this. But again, there's space enough at this table for us. Mm-hmm. And the surprise that, and these look like, they're not dressed as ancient Jews in Israel. They're painted like Italians, modern day, for them, modern day Italians. So again, people looking at the contemporaries of Caravaggio, looking at this, they would have been absolutely, they could imagine all of this whole scene of Christ and the man to the left. We just see his back and kind of his profile, and he looks like he's about to stand up. He's so surprised.
His little tattered elbow.
Yeah. And the other man has dropped his napkin. His napkin is twisted around. He just kind of screwed up on his lap, as he almost like he'd been using it, and then, oh my gosh, here he is.
The guy standing next to him looks like, are you kidding me? This whole time I was walking with you, and now I figured this out. Exactly.
And the shadow, it's interesting, because sometimes you would see you see depictions of Christ, especially as a baby. Some of the old, the Flemish masters, and the light coming, the source of light in the painting is Christ himself as a baby. And that's a fascinating concept to depict. But in this one, the source of light is obviously from above and to the left, I would say.
Yeah. And yet at the same time, Christ's hand blessing the bread almost seems to glow from within, like underneath it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. He did throw some really good symbolism in here. You even have the shell on the older man's shirt or cover.
So that would have been
talking about that pilgrim way.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I'm sure Caravaggio probably walked half of it almost.
Might as well have, oh my gosh. Yeah. With all the places he was running to and from,
Okay, and there's one thing in this picture that makes me want to get up and run to the table and fix it.
The basket.
The basket of fruit.
Yeah, almost falling off the table.
It's like I'm waiting for it to fall, or I got to run into the scene and put it back on the table.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing, another little detail about this, Kathryn, look at that glass jug of, I guess, water. It could be wine. And look how the light is reflected onto the table.
Oh, beautiful.
Isn't it? I mean, these details, these are not easy things to accomplish. This is not something that just anybody can do. You know, the folding of the tablecloth, the linen tablecloth on top of what was probably like a rug. That was something people used to do a lot. They would put small rugs on the table, almost like, to protect it. And it's just.
I mean, you've got the plaiting of the bread in front of them.
Yeah.
You still got the feet on this delicious little, I don't know, pheasant maybe?
Or chicken,
and then
something.
Alix, you got to take some time to zoom in on the ceramic water pitcher. Because I think you need someone to do a replica of that for your mantle behind you.
There you go. Can you just
it fits right in with... Okay, maybe you're not going to put a painting over your sofa, but you just might get that on your mantle.
Yeah, but it's really it's stunning. It's better than a photograph. It's more beautiful than a photograph.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
if you just stage that with actors in costume, it might look the same, but it's not going to have the same
depth,
draw you in feeling.
That's it. Draw you in.
No.
Drawing you in. Yeah.
Whoops. What did I do wrong, Alix? Okay, sorry.
Everyone wants to see
Every
that.
now and then, technical issues.
Sorry, technical issues.
Okay.
Oh, good.
There we go. We're
Nobody
back.
wants to see my big face. Oh my goodness.
Oh, sometimes we have a lot of fun behind the scenes, folks, and I'm sure you would just laugh along with us.
I hope they are laughing along with us.
Our patrons will enjoy laughing along with us, but we want to thank them. So we would like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the secrets of sacred art, including Ginny C., Brian V., Sebastian W., Stephanie D., and Stephen G. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the secrets of sacred art and all the shows on StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So thank you very much, patrons. We love doing these shows. Yeah. So next. So in case anybody hasn't noticed, our last couple of episodes all kind of tie into, I was blessed to go on a trip to Spain with my daughter last year. So she took me to the Prado Museum because they just so happen to have, through the generous donation of a patron who purchased this lost but now found Ecce Homo by Caravaggio. And it was on display at the Prado almost a full year. So end of May 2024 through February of 2025. So if you're heading to the Prado, it's not on display right now, folks. So this painting was painted around the period sometime between 1605 and 1609, and it's believed to have once been part of the private collection of Philip IV of Spain. So again, another one of Caravaggio's works in a Spanish collection. And there was some impact in Spanish painting of Caravaggio's work. You'll see more of this. The lighting effect that Caravaggio did, the way that he staged, the pieces. So it's neat to see his effect, how it slowly came into Spain.
Yeah, I mean, this is, sorry, I was just going to say it again. I think it's incredible that they determined they were able to confirm that this was a Caravaggio, even though he didn't sign it.
Yeah.
So was
it went through a lot of research.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course.
Yeah. Yeah. So they had to And it's interesting too, because there's a lot of debate with Caravaggio as to how many pieces he actually did. Some sources say 40, some say 80. The Prado is saying there's about 60 known works. So it's, because he did not sign, it is hard to pinpoint exactly which ones he did. And the painting has recovered a lot of its colors. As you can see, great side-by-side image here, Alex. Good job. Seeing what kind of shape it was in and the work that had to be done. This was under even the regional government in Madrid to really help bring this back to life. And it had appeared in an auction in April of 2021. And then it was had in-depth diagnostic investigation with a nuclear engineer who specializes in scientific techniques for study and conservation of cultural heritage, which is so important, especially think about in Spain, who has gone through Civil War. They had the French. Exactly. I mean, all the stuff we talked about over the last couple episodes. You've got to try to save your cultural heritage. And there's still ongoing battles today all around the world of people losing their cultural heritage. So it's good to know that there's actually people specializing in it.
Exactly, wanting to preserve their heritage. You know, I'm just looking at, one of the things, of course, artists can never predict is how their, the pigment and the materials they use, how they're going to stand the test of time. Because, somebody who painted something 500 years ago, they're not going to be around. They might hope that their paintings will still be around, but a lot of times if they try new things, it doesn't always work. And just looking at the before and after, I just wonder if there was some issue with the varnish.
Usually varnish causes a lot of discoloring in paintings, even good varnishes.
Yeah. And exposure to the sun and, humidity, damp, all this stuff, all these things play a factor in the condition of a painting. But this looks like it was probably stored. It looks like something might have been stored on top of it, and when they peeled it off, they peeled off some of the painting, but it's been beautifully, beautifully restored. And I'm going to say again with this, it is believed that this is Ecce Homo with Pontius Pilate saying, "Behold the man," which is what Ecce Homo means. And it is believed that Pilate is a self-portrait of Caravaggio.
Let's take a closer look at that.
He died young, but he had a rough life, so maybe.
Well, I mean, all the other faces that we've seen in these other paintings, in Goliath and in, who else was that being beheaded by
Holofernes.
Judith. Yeah. I mean, look at the face, is the same face.
Yeah. And in this image of it, so this again is really interesting about, to get in a little bit into the psychology of Caravaggio, how he's depicting himself in all of these paintings, the sinner, the monster, the one who's bringing destruction. And in this one, he's finally, he's caught up in this whole drama of the crucifixion and is powerless to do anything about it. He just is playing his role. And again, he's bringing you into the painting. Yes. Some of these images that we have of Ecce Homo, which when we did our Stations of the Cross and examining, going through the Stations of the Cross for our patrons, it's a very stylized image of Pontius Pilate, typically, not personal. He's really personal. He's looking at us saying, "Behold the man."
Yeah.
It's very powerful.
And I stood in front of this painting and it was powerful. I mean, I was glad we were there in a day where it wasn't too busy. Because sometimes when you go to the Prado, I mean, number one, you can't take any pictures, which is a good thing. Because you don't need a bunch of people standing around taking pictures.
So weird.
The other thing
to do that.
It is. It's like, just enjoy it, people.
Just
I mean,
look at the
wish.
painting,
Yeah. I wish I could have, but it was nice because it wasn't too crowded in the room. I was able to like stand at different distances from it. So you really get to get that feeling of like, okay, this is where he wanted us to view it from. But then it's like, let me take a step closer. And what's it like to really like breathe in the scene? And the way he presents Pilate in this, almost, it's funny because at times it feels almost flippant, like here he is, but other times it's like, here he is. Are you sure you want me to do what you're asking me to do?
Yeah.
So, and then just the face and, the soldier behind him putting the drape on Christ. He's almost at the point of tears, almost shocked at what's happening.
Yeah. And then there's Christ just, even in his seemingly passive state here, he's still actually, even this is he's bringing about our salvation. It's beautiful. It really does draw you in. Yeah. I would say this.
Christ really struck me.
Yes. Oh, wow. Look at what you've...
Yeah, I wanted to take a deeper look. And so I just typed in Ecce Homo iconography because the Christ face in this most recently found one, which is on the left side here, the way the beard is and the mustache, the tilt of his head, to me, it felt more stylized, more mystical than the other two faces. And then I was like, wait a minute. Okay, so I did get an icon of the Ecce Homo, which in Eastern art, they don't call it the Ecce Homo, but they call it Christ the Bridegroom. Because this is supposed to make us think of the story of the 10 virgins.
Yeah.
Waiting.
The wise and foolish virgins,
Yeah. And I believe that, this image is used for reflection at the midnight hour of the hours where, you're supposed to reflect that the bridegroom's coming at the time you least expect.
Yeah.
To show him just humbly he's been mocked, he's been humiliated and beaten and moments before his crucifixion, and yet he is the bridegroom coming for us. So I found it very fascinating to see the way Caravaggio used almost an iconographic image.
Yeah.
The picture in the lower right corner is 2 years or 3 years later, but still has that same sort of mysterious iconographic look to it.
Oh my gosh, that one is just beautiful. That's beautiful. I would say this. I would recommend, just as you were talking, Kathryn, maybe, again, if you're looking at this on YouTube, to kind of go back and just pause at this image of the Ecce Homo and just take it in and let it take you in. Just for a few minutes. It's beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah. Just all those great details. Every Caravaggio gives us something to look at. Yes.
And do you know what? Pray for his soul.
Yes.
We don't know what, he had a hard life a lot of it, I think, was self-imposed for whatever reason. I'm not going to speculate on what was going on in his mind or what was motivating him to do what he did. But why not pray for his soul? He's given us some extraordinary sacred art that, his sacred art does draw the mind and heart to God. Mm-hmm. It does what sacred art is supposed to do. Yeah. And for that, we're grateful to him. Yeah.
Exactly. So we'd like to thank you, our listeners, for listening to and watching The Secrets of Sacred Art on StarQuest. To find previous episodes of The Secrets of Sacred Art and send feedback, please visit sqpn.com/sacredart. You can send us comments by email at sacredart@sqpn.com. Leave us comments on YouTube, or visit our Discord community on sqpn.com/Discord. I mean, this episode, thank you.
Yeah, because of Discord. Yeah. So Discord, we would love to hear we'd love to hear from people on there. Yeah. We get some fun conversations, as we say, but yeah.
Yeah. And if you have a favorite Caravaggio, post it. We'll have a little discussion on Discord.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we'll be back next time and encountering the sacred art out of place. And that is Juan de Juanes, the Last Supper altarpiece, and more. And until then, I'm Alix Murray.
And I'm Kathryn Laffrey, hoping you find something beautiful.
Bye-bye.